So I have a viewer question today coming from Christian, and Christian shoots cars, and he's going to be shooting cars late at night. And I checked out your Instagram, by the way, and it's pretty good. So currently the stuff I'm seeing on your Instagram was day shots of these cars, and they're supercars. They're, you know, I saw some Lamborghinis. I saw, I think, one of the Audi sport cars, and I think a Lexus IS, whatever, sports car. I don't know all the names, but I know I recognize them. So yeah, some nice looking sport cars. I saw my Lambo, and you didn't ask my permission to shoot it, so I was kind of surprised that you were shooting my car like that. And I'm lying. That's actually not my Lamborghini. I'm struggling to make 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. I think I have about 2 pennies to rub together. So no, I do not own a Lamborghini. Yeah. Anyway, so you're gonna start shooting at night, and currently you're shooting these things with your iPhone and a gimbal. I think you said you're using the Smooth Q. You might have said Smooth 4. I can't remember if it was the Q or the 4. I actually used to own the Q. I currently own the 4 myself. Both very good gimbals, especially if you're using an iPhone, because they really designed it for the iPhone. It really doesn't work very well if you're an Android user like myself, but you can still make, there's workarounds, you can make it work. But anyway, that's a different subject. But you were looking for a camera that's going to do better than your iPhone in low light, because you're going to be shooting in dark environments, in parking garages, and at night, and everything else. And you said you were also in need of something that's going to have better battery performance than your phone currently has, which is only like 45 minutes to an hour. And then of course with a phone you can't swap the battery out, right? So yeah, that's an issue. And then you also said you wanted something that was better in cold weather as well, just something more weather resistant. So let's talk about it. You know, first thing I'm going to mention, and this is by far my least favorite camera of the ones that I'm about to mention for what you're doing, because you also mentioned you wanted something that could shoot a higher frame rate. It's the Canon 6D, the original one, because it's really cheap. So it checks some of your boxes because it is going to be better in low light than your phone. Still going to have good image quality. I think it's going to be fine in cold weather. Also, the battery life is good on that. But the problem is it could only shoot up to 30 frames per second in 1080p. And you can do 60 frames per second, but that's in 720. And who shoots in 720? So that's a problem. So yeah, I'm not sure that I love that one, but I mean, $550 used. I think it's, can't remember how much it is brand new, but you can get it used really cheap. And you pair that together with like a 50mm f1.8, the Nifty 50, which is, you know, $125 new, and used you get it anywhere from like 50 to like 80 bucks. And you got a camera that's really cheap with a very inexpensive lens, but it's gonna create really, really nice looking images. And then of course, if you wanna go wider, excuse me, I think I took some notes on a wider lens. Yeah, let's see here. Oh, I didn't write the wide one down, did I? Okay. Okay. All right, so I was just talking Nifty 50. And then I wrote down here, if you want like an 85mm for like close-up shots, you could get an 85mm, a Canon 85mm. I think that was f1.8 as well, for 300 bucks, new. So imagine what you could get it for used. So then you're like way under your budget, which was, and I don't know if I mentioned it, your budget was, I think $1,500 to $1,700. So you're way under that with that particular combo. Other than that, you might want to go, if you're going full frame, you might want to go with like a 35mm lens for the type of stuff you're doing. That might be even better, a little wider. I might get 2 different lenses if I was you. I might get a 50, I might get a 35. I might even get something wider if you could afford it, like a 24mm. Those tend to be a little bit more for full frame, but if you look around and, under different manufacturers, you might be able to find one that's reasonably priced. So, you know, 24, 35, and 50, somewhere in there is probably where you might want to live for the type of stuff you're shooting. But the the high-speed shooting is not really going to work, and that's why I'm not really feeling that. And I think actually brand new is $1,000. That's what it is. It's $1,000 for that camera, but my least favorite. So let's move on. You had mentioned, you know, something like the Panasonic Gh4 would be excellent for what you're doing, and I totally agree. It would be, but like you said, you're looking over $2,000 for the body alone with that camera, so it's just kind of out of the running. Because even used, it's still going to be expensive. People are willing to pay money for that camera because it's a beast. So, you know, you're not going to find it all that cheap. So you got to kind of forget about that. I didn't check the price of the GH5, the standard one, but I think it's because it's still, the body would still probably be by itself just a little out of your budget, or just like right in your budget, and then you don't have a lens yet. So I don't think that would necessarily work either. So we got to kind of skip that as well. But then you also mentioned the Sony a7 II and the a7 III. a7 III would be out of your budget, but the a7 II is in your budget because used, I saw it's going for about $750, and new, it's on sale for $900, which I think is like $600 off. $900 right now on sale, brand new. So certainly in your budget, low light performance is going to be better than the 6D. And you're getting in-body image stabilization in that as well. So good low light performance, in-body image stabilization. You could shoot up to 60 frames per second in 1080p. You could shoot up to 120 frames per second in 720, but you can do it. And on top of that, now you have a camera that also takes good pictures, right? Same thing, 6D, a7 II. You're into cameras that also take nice pictures. And for what you're doing, you're not just doing video, looking at your Instagram page, you're also taking pictures. So now you got two cameras that can take good pictures. But forget about the 6D. I don't even know why I'm mentioning that, because I don't really think that's a good option. The a7 II, good option. Let's move to another Sony option that's also good to me. And it's also going to give you good low light performance. The a7S. The a7S version 1 is going to give you even better low light performance than the a7 II. The only caveat there is you're going to be losing that in-body image stabilization, but you're going to, in return, get really, really, really good low light performance. So you could mate that with a Sony 50mm lens, and I don't know if I wrote it down. I don't think I did. But I'm pretty sure the Sony 50mm f1.8 E-mount lens, I think it's in the 300s, like 350 or something like that. So, you know, it's not an expensive lens. And again, it's 50mm, and that's like what you see. The field of view is like what you see in real life. So it's a decent field of view, but it's not super wide. It's not super close. It's right in the middle. You might want something a little wider for the stuff you're doing, but it's still a good lens. It's going to give you nice images and a nice field of view. So there is that. And now the a7S, price-wise, is going to be a little bit more than an a7 II. I think used, I was seeing it for like around $900, so it's a little bit more. And brand new is certainly more than the a7 II is right now. I can't remember the exact price, but it's not $900, that's for sure. It's a little bit more. So, but I think it's still kind of close, and it's in your budget, so that's a good option as well. Also, both of those cameras, I think they both have like the tilty screen on it. So you can put it up and you can still see it, because you can tilt the screen down, you can put it down below, tilt it up, and now you can still see what you're shooting. That type of stuff really does help. Something else that the 6D doesn't have. And also both of these cameras come with mic inputs and headphone jacks. You might not need that for stuff you're doing right now, but you might need it in the future. So just knowing that it has that is kind of good. And also the a7S can shoot 4K externally. That's another feature of it that the a7 II cannot do. So 4K is something that you're going to be into down the line. You can do it with an a7S Mark I for a pretty inexpensive price. Moving on, and I do believe also the a7 II, if I'm not, shoots log. So you can shoot in log mode if you're into coloring and all that. The A7 II can do that. I'm not sure, and I'm pretty sure the A7S does it too. So you got log modes in that as well. Now moving on, let's talk about another camera here. And now we're getting out of full frame. Now we're going to step into micro four thirds. And my phone is ringing. Hold on. So now let's switch gears here and go into a smaller sensor camera. And we're going to talk about a micro four thirds camera, maybe two of them. Let's talk about the Panasonic Gh4 because, like I said, the G8 series is probably going to be a little out of your budget, at least the newer ones. If you're talking about like a Gh4, I think that's in your budget, but for low light, I don't think you want to really mess with a Gh4. But a G85, which I personally own, performs pretty decently in low light. I'm sure you could take it up to 6400 ISO with a faster lens on it, and you probably get some pretty clean images, or mostly clean. It's going to be better than your phone for sure. And it is a weather-resistant body. It's $900 with a kit lens. So you get the kit lens, but that's not going to be good for low light. So then you would need something that's a little faster. You could get like a 25 millimeter f1.7, which is basically a 50 millimeter equivalent. And that should give you some good low light performance. And it only costs about $169, I believe, brand new. You can find them used for less. So there's that lens. You could get a 20 millimeter and shoot a little wider, which is now a 40 millimeter equivalent. That one's a little bit more. That one's $269 new, but again, used. It's not too expensive, and that's in your budget for sure. That also has in-body image stabilization in it, just like the Sony A7 II, except the in-body image stabilization in the G85 is better. Of course, you said you're probably going to be using a gimbal, so you'll probably buy something like a Zhiyun crane or something anyway, so that really doesn't matter too much. But if you just want to get away with just holding something handheld, you're getting just like a panning or tilting shot, you could get away with it with a G85. And that in-body image stabilization is going to work even for a lens that has no stabilization in it. So you put that 25 millimeter, it's going to give it stabilization. You put the 20 millimeter on it, it's going to give it some stabilization. And then if you use a Panasonic lens that already has image stabilization in it, it kind of doubles the image stabilization and makes it even better. So it's a nice camera. Like I said, I own it. I use it to shoot weddings all the time. I'm very happy with the results. Definitely, it's like it's a video camera disguised as a stills camera, basically. So that's a good option. Now, also, if you wanted to save even more money, you could get something like the Panasonic GX85. Not G85, but GX85, which is a smaller camera than the G85. It's like a rangefinder type of looking camera. The only difference is that I can really see the main difference is it doesn't have like a flip tilt screen. So the G85 has a screen that can flips out and flips towards you. So if you're doing vlogs and stuff, it makes it easier. Also, there's a mic jack, no headphone jack, but there's a mic jack. And what else? I think the battery might be a little bit bigger in there too, so you might get better battery life. The battery life is probably going to be about 2 hours in the G85. It's pretty decent. And I didn't mention it, but the ones in the Sonys that we discussed, I think it's probably going to get you around an hour battery life. Similar to your phone, but the difference is you could just take the battery out and put a new one in. You can't do that with your phone. So I still think the Sony ones we discussed are still good options as well. And the only other thing that the GX85 is missing, record limits. So the G85 has no record limit. It just keeps recording until your battery dies. So basically you're gonna get like 2 hours of video straight. Obviously with the Sonys that I mentioned, there are record limits. The limits are 30 minutes. And with the GX85, there's also a record limit of 30 minutes. So keep that in mind. But you're going to save some money because that GX85, despite not having and it doesn't have a mic jack. I don't know if I said that, but it doesn't have a mic jack either. but it's very inexpensive. It's $500 with the kit lens right now. That's really cheap. So keep that one in mind. You can also get speed boosters to work with the GX85 and the G85, and put that Canon glass right on those cameras, and really get some really good low light performance if you put it together with a nifty 50 or something. But you just got to be aware that your field of view is not going to be as wide as it would be on a full frame camera. And you may know all this stuff already, but there's other people watching that might not know this stuff. So your frame of view is going to change. It's pretty much, it's going to change a little bit, but if you're using a speed booster, not so much. So it's an option, and it's a good one. So keep that in mind. And lastly, I'll mention the Canon M50. The Canon M50 is what's shooting this video right now. Most of the YouTube videos that I've been shooting in the past 3, 4, 5, maybe more than that actually. I've had the camera for about 8 months now, so I've been shooting most of these YouTube videos with this camera for various reasons. One being that it has very, very good autofocus, and it has that variable angle flip screen that flips toward me so I can get my framing when I'm shooting these videos. Also has a mic input, so I have a mic on right now, and that's very helpful. So the M series doesn't have a ton of lens options, but for what you're doing, the low light stuff, there is a 22mm f2, which I think will do pretty well. And there is a new 35mm f1.4. And I do believe the 35mm is I think it's like $500. A little bit more than that, maybe. Let's see. Did I write that down? I don't think I think it's $479, if I'm not mistaken. It's $479, and I think the 22mm is just a little bit over $200, maybe $229 or something like that. Two inexpensive lenses for what they are, and the camera itself right now is under $600, brand new with the kit lens. So definitely within your budget. That's why I'm mentioning it. I think the only thing that you're going to be missing there is it's not really weather resistant. So will it do good in cold weather? I've used it in cold weather and I haven't had a problem, but continuous cold weather, I don't know. I doubt you would have an issue, but there's that to think about. Other than that, it's a really good camera. It does shoot 4K as well, can do 4K time lapsing and all that. Just like the G85 that I mentioned, but the G85 has better 4K for sure. So that is definitely one difference between those two cameras. But this has a bigger sensor size. You'd think that would mean better low light performance, but it really doesn't, because the G85 actually performs better in low light. And I did a little test. You can check that video out. I'll put a card up there or whatever. So this one actually is not as good in low light, but it's still good in low light. And it's a really decent camera. So that's something to think about. And other than that, I mean, if I had to just pick one camera out of all the ones that I've just discussed with you, it's really hard to pick one because I feel like they all kind of do what you need. They all have the 60 frames per second, except for the 6D. Let's just take that out of just forget about that one. But all the Sony ones that I mentioned, the Panasonic ones, and this one Canon M series one, they all have 60 frames per second. The Panasonic, well, the one Panasonic, the G85, is also going to give you a non-stop record limit, which I don't think for what you're doing you really need. So that's not really a huge deal. But other than that, I mean, they're all pretty much checking the boxes. The Sony's going to give you the best low light performance, the A7S. Best low light performance out of the ones that I mentioned. The A7 II is going to be second best. And then the Panasonic G85, the GX85, and the M50. But they're all good. So it's really coming down to how much you want to spend. What type of system do you want to get into? Do you want to go down the Sony road and maybe eventually get Sony glass and invest into that system? Or do you want to go Panasonic and get Panasonic glass and Olympus glass, you know, Micro Four Thirds stuff? Or do you want to get into the M series? And like I said, there's not a whole lot of glass available, but they are starting to develop more lenses Do you want to get into that system? Of course, all of these systems can be adapted. You can get adapters for all of them and put different glass on anyway, so it really doesn't matter. You got some things to think about. You got some research to do, but hopefully this is a good starting point for you. Keep in mind there are affiliate links below. If you purchase, or anybody watching this video purchases from my links, I get a small commission that I use to make more content for you guys. So keep that in mind. Those links though may not work great for Christian though, because you're trying to find deals. You might find good deals on Craigslist. You might find good deals on eBay. You might find good deals on B&H. Wherever you can get it from for a good deal, go ahead and get it from. Don't worry about the links. But hopefully you found this helpful. I will share your Instagram also in the description so people can go check you out. You know, he's shooting cars, so if you're into cars, you know, definitely check him out on Instagram. Go ahead and follow him. Thank you for your question. It was a great question. I'm Mike Turner. Thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you soon.